Please, let us stay. The plea comes from a young Wehrmachthhelferin on a Bavarian rail spur, fog curling around ties that smell of creosote and coal. An American MP with an M1 Garand and a clipboard moves the line forward. Search, segregate, safeguard, silence, speed. Heino R. Eriksson, a captured Afrika Korps private, remembers the cadence like a drumbeat. Speed it up, move those Krauts out on the double. He braces for a fist. He gets water. He expects to vanish. He is photographed, tagged, and logged. A chaplain practices German syllables so he can say each name right. A medic writes the date on a dressing because even bandages become records. Word has travelled about Texas, about Camp Hearn near Bryan, barracks in rows, infirmary rounds, Sunday chapel, letters home that actually arrive, Nazi enforcers separated so nights stay quiet. In May 1945, the United States calmly manages 425,871 Axis POWs, inside the homeland 371,683 of them Germans, while still fighting across two oceans. That isn't normal strength, that is values scaled into logistics. A Luftwaffe radio man touches a crate stamped US, and whispers, "They feed us like their own." Supremacy, he learns, is not black uniforms and shouting, it is clipboards, photo boards, and hot coffee poured from a dented canteen cup that smells like boiled metal and safety. The MP points to a waiting GMC CCKW deuce and a half, idling like a patient beast. "You will be accounted for," he says. The truck tailgate slams, the convoy rolls, and an impossible thought takes hold. These Americans don't just win, they keep faith. If a nation can humanely hold almost 500,000 enemies and never lose its cool, imagine what its factories built for its friends, what its trains carried to the front, and what its ships brought back under lights that never blink. The train yard breathes like a living thing, steam sighs, couplers clank, pigeons lift and settle on the gantry crane. The GI boots leave small, moons in the damp cinders. The women clutch their bundles tighter when the whistle moans from the main line. The MP's voice is steady, not loud. Discipline makes volume unnecessary. His sleeve smells faintly of gun oil and laundry soap. He has a chocolate bar in his pocket he could keep. Instead, he breaks it, passes half to a nurse with cracked lips, and pockets the wrapper with the same care he gives a transfer form. Behind the wire, a field stove pops, frying dough in oil. The sweet smell drifts over and turns heads. An engineer checks the spacing of posts with a tape, then chalks 20 feet in block letters on a shed wall, because even a fence gets measured in this army. A Red Cross truck rattles in and the guard steps aside without theatre. Procedures need no show. Someone starts to cry when she hears her surname pronounced correctly. The chaplain read it slowly, syllable by syllable, the way his professor taught him back in Pennsylvania. It sounds like a tiny ceremony in a place that should have none. A crow caws from the crane, and the MP reads the next name. The convoy pulls out onto the road toward the larger processing site. The cabs smell of canvas and diesel, the benches creak, the map on the dashboard is folded to today's mile markers. The yard shrinks behind them until the steam is only a white thread in the trees. What remains with everyone, guard and prisoner alike, is the same heavy, simple idea. In America's hands, even captivity runs on dignity and timetables. That idea will cross the ocean in letters and rumors. It will arrive in Texas as steady as sunrise. It will shape how enemies think when they hear the word American. The next chapter begins before the trucks reach the highway. A horn, a rough road, and a voice calling from a truck bed. "We've got space climb in." Dust boils on a Tunisian road after Cape Bon, May 1943. Two German POWs sag in the heat like wilted flags. AUS. Deuce and a half growls beside them, brakes, hissing. A GI leans out and shouts, "Hey, Krauts, want a ride?" The answer is shy, formal, and stunned. "Yes, please. Thank you." Heino climbs into a truck bed that smells of canvas and gasoline and feels a fear he didn't know he was carrying slide off his shoulders. Hours later, at a wire enclosure, a corporal heaves a crate of sea rations and a jerry can of water over the fence. Ragged cheers. Hino will write. And you can hear the tinny music of spoons on mess kits as hope returns like a forgotten taste. This is abundance, turned into strategy. American supply isn't just rails and liberty ships, it is a habit of small, repeated mercies that run faster than propaganda. Word spreads camp to camp. The Americans tag you, photograph you, feed you, pay you for labor under Geneva, and ship you where the paperwork says you'll go. Guards keep the fence honest with M1 Garans and keep themselves honest with the rulebook. A chaplain reads names in German. A medic notes temperature and pulse like ammunition counts. They brought water. They counted us. They knew our names. That sentence becomes a weapon more durable than steel. You can crush an army with firepower. You can break its certainty by keeping faith. The truck bounces over washboard ruts. Every jolt shakes loose another rumor. Someone whispers that in Texas the camps serve coffee with milk. Someone else swears a friend gained weight. The sun presses down like a hand on the back of the neck, and then the shade of a tent flies past, and the world smells like canvas and lemon disinfectant. At dusk, the perimeter lamps come alive, and moths throw themselves at the glass. A sentry checks his watch, then his sling, then the safety on his rifle by feel. Inside the wire, a corporal shows a posted schedule with neat block letters: chow, roll call, work details, mail, lights out. It is a simple list, but it tears away chaos like a bandage from a wound. Hino watches a GI cut the top from a ration tin and share it with a man who still has dust in the corners of his eyes. The American shrugs like it's nothing. Maybe it is nothing here. Maybe that is the point. The enemy's shock is not the food, it is the ease with which giving seems ordinary. Far away, factories are moving at the same rhythm. A forklift beeps, a whistle blows, a shift bell rings in Detroit. 1,000 small kindnesses ride the same rails as tanks and wheat. The system does not care if you are friend or foe when it calculates calories and miles. It just cares that the numbers add up and that the train is on time. By midnight, the desert turns cold enough to bite. A GI throws a blanket into the enclosure and says, "Pass it down." It moves like a grey wave over shoulders and knees. A man who yesterday would not have shared a match with an enemy now tucks the blanket edge under a stranger's elbow so the wind can't get in. At Reveille, the sun comes up too fast. The first pot of coffee tastes burnt and perfect. The guard captain tells the interpreter, "Same process today, same as yesterday." That sentence is a promise. Consistency is a kind of kindness. Letters will carry this day across the sea. The phrase, "Want a ride?" will change shape in memory until it becomes a kind of headline. It will make some men stop lying to themselves. It will make others stop fighting so hard. If this is how the Americans treat us when we have no leverage, what do they do for their own? The answer is on the assembly lines, and it is waiting just beyond the horizon of this camp. How do you win hard, stay human, and keep rage from running the ranks? America answers with the 1929 Geneva Convention turned into muscle memory. Identify, search for weapons, segregate by rank and category, safeguard from harm, enforce silence to prevent plotting, speed prisoners to the rear for processing. Even at capture sites, the sequence holds medics first, rolls second, transport third. The shock to the enemy is not the rifles, it is the clipboards. Women auxiliaries step from the line because they hear Geneva and grasp that here, even victors obey rules. In Texas, Camp Hearn becomes a byword for order. Barracks on a grid, infirmary rounds that catch fevers early, chaplains who speak in full sentences, a central mail system that returns men to the web of family. When Nazi hardliners intimidate moderates, American officers separate them and prosecute violence. Law, not fear, decides who sleeps where. Hino holds up his official camp photograph, a tiny square pinned to a card with name, date, and camp number, proof that American power prefers records to rage. "We were safeguarded and sped to the rear," he writes, amazed that the rulebook matches the day. This is not softness. This is discipline you can scale. The M1's steel and the rulebook's paper fuse into one authority. On inspection mornings, belts shine and floors pass the white glove test. The mess line moves like a metronome. Ladles hit tin with the same portion for everyone. The doctor calls for the next patient, with a tone that would fit any small-town clinic, and the interpreter repeats the instructions exactly, because accuracy is respect. A young signals helper, her fingers raw from cold, tells the guard she has a sister in Hamburg. He writes the address carefully on a form and shows it back to her so she can see each letter is correct. The paper disappears into a canvas pouch marked for the mail run. Weeks later, a letter returns like a bird that knows the way home. Rules make paths that even fear can't block. The library hut smells like pine and ink. A POW traces English words with a stub pencil, sounding them out. Table, window, bread, mercy. In the yard, a baseball arcs against the blue and thumps into a mitt, and someone laughs by reflex, and then looks around, embarrassed, until the guard nods once to say it's all right. Discipline and decency can share a fence. The enemy's shock at all this is layered. First, the realization that there are standards, then the deeper blow. The standards apply to everyone. In a world where law has often meant what the strong say today, this is a different kind of strength law that restrains the strong first. A rumor reaches the camp that a man was beaten for stealing bread. It is not true. He was docked privileges and assigned latrine duty. The difference matters to people who have seen the other version of power. A system that punishes without hatred, builds trust without speeches. At night, the guard on the corner tower listens to frogs in a ditch, and the soft click of a typewriter in the admin hut. Pages slide into a file cabinet that creaks like a church pew. Somewhere, a sergeant initials a form, and a captain signs a transfer order, and a rail yard in the morning will fit the pieces together without hurry. This is the quiet machinery that beat the Reich as surely as tanks, a country that decides in advance how it will behave at its worst moment, then behaves that way anyway. The skeleton of victory is law, the muscle is industry, the blood is generosity that does not blink. When all three circulate, resistance bleeds away. The next train brings not just prisoners, but proof that the system is still on time. A foreman in Detroit bangs a wrench on a steel table. We're switching from cars to airframes. At Willow Run, the doors slide open on a mile-long line that pushes out B-24 Liberators until workers start telling time by bombers, one every 63 minutes at peak, a full metal heartbeat. Across the United States, the numbers leap from high to unbelievable. Roughly 297,000 aircraft produced, nearly two-thirds of all Allied military equipment stamped, riveted, and shipped by American hands. A P-51D Mustang climbs over Italy, its Packard-built Merlin engine singing a bright, mechanical hymn. A B-29 Superfortress roars off Tinian heavy with fuel and intent. A column of M4 Sherman tanks, 30 tons each, 75 millimeters, guns ready clatters past a railhead stocked by clerks who can read a war from ledger lines. Crated engines, radio sets, K-rations, spare treads, medical chests, everything stacked, labelled, predictable. The same trains feeding pattern move hospital cars and POW convoys on time because to Americans timetables are moral documents. Marge, Ruth Canning, Transportation Corps, signs off on tonnage and people without changing pens. She moves lives the way she moves shells precisely. Her office smells like ink and hot dust. A wall calendar fills with arrows and initials that would look like chaos to anyone else. To her, it is harmony. A captured officer watches a Liberty ship unload trucks and reload with prisoners in one tide and mutters, "Their factories don't sleep." He is right. War plants throb at shift change. Whistle, lunch pail, whistle again. Lights burn at midnight over foundries, where sand molds cough out yet another block of strength. A teenage riveter wipes aluminum dust from her eyelashes and tightens another line of fasteners along a liberator's skin. In Seattle, a crane rolls a wing toward a fuselage with the lazy grace of a heron. In Connecticut, A factory stamps out Browning machine gun parts by the bucket. None of these are glamorous moments. All of them win the war. The miracle is not that the U.S. can build so much. It is that it can move it where it needs to go, when it needs to go there, and still have room on the manifest for mercy. The system that ships bombs, ships blankets, the machine that lifts tanks, loads stretchers. The same logic that crushes tyranny feeds its prisoners. The enemy's shock grows with each schedule met. How do you oppose a nation that can change its mind in a week and its output in a month? How do you fight a country whose logistics can pivot from combat to care before your decision memo reaches the front? A freight conductor snaps his pocket watch shut. A clerk ties twine around a stack of forms. A driver taps the stick, the glass on a gauge, and smiles when the needle steadies. These tiny gestures are an army of their own. They say that chaos is losing. When a POW convoy merges into a column of Red Ball Express trucks, someone inside the wire hears the diesel chorus and feels the idea settle in. The Americans are not running on willpower, they are running on a system. Systems beat inspiration when the miles get long. At shift's end, the city hum does not quiet, it changes key. Streetcars spit sparks, cafeterias clatter with trays, and the bulletin board lists another overtime sign-up that fills in 5 minutes. Somewhere a foreman posts a new rate, one bomber wing section every 40 minutes. Somewhere else a union steward pins a safety poster about earplugs. It looks ordinary. It is miraculous. In the break room, someone reads a letter from a brother on a destroyer. He says the convoy felt like a moving city, and when they turned for home, the holds were full of men who had been enemies that morning. He wrote one more line that everyone remembers. We did not have to choose between strong and good. Texas sun bakes the parade ground at Camp Hearn. German POWs raise a modest theater, carve a stone castle on off hours, and line up for mail that actually arrives and smells faintly of home. When Nazi diehards bully moderates, American officers separate them and open cases. Order is not a slogan, it is armor. The chow hall smells of coffee and yeast rolls. Some men gain back the weight. War stole 128 to 160, 170, 180, because the ration scale is real, the infirmary treats them as patients, and rest is enforced. Heino shows his official camp photo date stamped, filed, retrievable proof that a mighty nation still believes in paperwork over passion. Work details move to Texas farms, rail spurs, sawmills. Pay chits are logged to the cent, hours capped by Geneva, safety gear issued and checked. Guards wear authority and restraint on the same belt. The M1 Garan's walnut stock gleams, but it is the rulebook that gives the weapon honor. They are stricter with their regulations than we are with ours. A POW writes home, half complaint, half relief. That sentence means quiet at night that fear cannot provide. It means a nurse sleeps without fists on the door. It means a chaplain finishes a prayer without watching the shadows. The enemy's shock is watching their own extremists lose status under a foreign law that still calls them men. A bugle floats over the compound like a silver ribbon. The laundry steam smells clean and hot. A sign beside the canteen lists prices in cents and rules in short sentences. No hoarding, no reselling, no favors from guards, violations reported. Nobody likes all the rules. Almost everyone sleeps better because of them. In the workshop, a sergeant demonstrates how to use a saw guard and makes a man repeat the steps until his hands move right without thinking. In the clinic, a nurse tapes a sprained wrist and writes her initials with a neat loop. The ledger on the counter has coffee stains and perfect columns. In this place, even the stains look orderly. A letter from Bavaria arrives with pressed flowers inside and a smear of blue ink where a child leaned on the page too hard. The recipient reads it twice, and then a third time, and then folds it with care, very unlike the way he handled grenades. A different kind of courage is needed here. The courage to wait, to hope, to accept mercy without mistaking it for weakness. The theatre's curtain is a patchwork of khaki and flour sacks. A violin scrapes a tune learned in a cold farmhouse years ago. A guard laughs at a joke before he realizes, and then shrugs because laughter is not contraband. A sketch on the bulletin board shows the castle the men are building from stone they scavenged near the creek. It looks like something a boy would draw before the world got complicated. Maybe that is the point. At count, boots scuff, numbers rise, pencils tick. A cloud passes over, and the heat eases for a minute. The camp commander signs the day's incidents, sheet none serious, and stares at the words as if they are treasure. Peace has texture. Here it feels like predictable meals, clean water, and the low hum of a generator after lights out. When the train whistle calls again, it is not a threat. It is the sound of the larger machine moving with confidence. Some men will transfer, some will stay, all will be seen. The bridge to the next chapter is a simple shape we have now learned to trust. A clip of paper, a roster line, a truck that arrives on time. In an age of wreckage, that shape is a miracle you can touch. How do you fight across 2 oceans, feed allies, and still house nearly 500,000 enemy prisoners without cracking? Watch a Liberty ship ease into port, unload tanks, flour, spare engines, then sail home with POWs sorted by unit, rank, and medical status, every tag checked twice. The scale is breathtaking and clear. 175 main camps across the United States, more than 500 branch camps, work details that save harvests and keep depots alive, while American divisions stay forward. An Italian POW, Giorgio, writes, "We picked peaches in July, and they paid us. The guard showed me the rule in his book. He tastes white bread he has not seen in years, and decides the word enemy has a footnote in America. On the pier, a staff sergeant signs manifests with a stub pencil, while a Navy signalman flashes a message to a troopship. Inter-service choreography looks like jazz made of steel. Overhead, a P-51D arcs home on a silver line. Below it, a chaplain says, "You are safe in our custody," in patient, classroom German. Freight cars clank, cranes swing, stretcher teams move with practiced calm, and the whole machine says one thing: we can do this all day. The enemy's shock is the rhythm: convoys out, convoys back, no vanishing, no chaos, no rumor stronger than the paperwork. By nightfall, the camp band plays a waltz learned from the radio, the guard checks his watch, and the ledger balances. The bridge forward is thunder. The full scope of American dominance is about to come into view. Not in boasts, but in numbers that look unreal and stay true. Chapter after chapter. In the harbor, gulls wheel and shout over a barge stacked with crates stenciled in black. A forklift lifts and sets, until motion itself seems to be the nation's language. The harbor master taps a pencil against his ear and calls out berth numbers that sound like coordinates to a better world. A quartermaster opens a crate and checks against a manifest. Canned meat, powdered milk, tourniquets, field telephones. He nods once and snaps the lid closed. Behind him, the ocean makes that long, shushing sound that turns noise into meaning. People will live because strangers measured things. A train slides out past the breakwater, a string of olive-drab cars clicking like teeth. Inside, men sit in order, caps on knees, faces turned toward windows, where America passes in stripes: marsh, town, pasture, silo, billboard, river. The rhythm of wheels on rail knits thoughts together that war had torn. Some sleep for the first time without flinching at footsteps. Near midnight, the convoy halts at a junction to let an ambulance train pass. Red crosses throb under blackout curtains. A private on the POW train takes off his cap. The guard does the same. For a moment, nobody is anything but human in a world welded together by timetables. Dawn lays a new color on everything. Coffee, steam curls. From a mess can on a platform, someone laughs at a joke the interpreter mangles but tries anyway. The rules still hold, the papers still match, and the day opens like a door on oiled hinges. When the train finally noses into the siding at the receiving camp, you can feel the entire journey settle and lock, as if a gear has found its groove. Count, unload, form by ranks, move to processing. It sounds like bureaucracy. It feels like rescue. The fact that both can be true is the shock of the American century. The next section will widen the lens until the map itself looks like a production line, and mercy is stamped on every bill of lading. A clerk circles a figure on a wall chart and laughs because it feels like fiction. In 1939, the United States made fewer than 3,000 military aircraft. A few years later, America is turning out planes by the tens of thousands and feeding 2 oceans at once. Workers at Willow Run tell time by B-24 seconds, 1 bomber every 63 minutes when the line hums right, and that's just one plant among thousands. The country does not only build machines, it builds the roads, rails, docks, and rosters that move them with metronome accuracy. A P-51D climbs hard over Italy because a Packard Merlin engine and a train schedule shook hands weeks ago. A column of M4 Shermans clatters past a depot because some teenager in a Midwestern factory tightened a grease-stained bolt to the right torque. The miracle is not noise, it is order. Paperwork defeats panic. Timing defeats fear. While aircraft numbers climb toward the incredible roughly 297,000 total camp numbers, also scale with quiet precision. 175 main camps and more than 500 branch sites receive, register, and protect human beings who yesterday were shooting at us. The same nation that produces weapons at scale produces mercy at scale. It is not softness, it is the strength to be consistent. They wrote everything down, a POW tells a buddy, even my blisters. He means it as a joke and as respect. Meanwhile, in a freight office, Major Ruth Canning taps a pencil against a map and sends cars west with rations, and east with wounded, and north with men who will sit behind wire and heal. This, too, is combat. Every signature is a blow against chaos. Every train that arrives on time is a punch landed on despair. The enemy's shock is simple. They cannot match this. Rhythm. Dictatorships can order, but they cannot coordinate. They can scream, but they cannot schedule. The American system is boring in the way the tide is boring. It never stops, and it wears down cliffs. The clerk puts his pencil away and tacks up a new chart. The line keeps rising. The room smells like coffee and mimeograph ink. Outside, a switchman flips a lever and the rails sing. If the numbers look unreal, it's because we have forgotten what a free people can do when they promise each other to show up and then actually do it. At the wire, a young signals helper whispers, "Bit America good," and the guard understands without a dictionary. The rumor mill has beaten every leaflet. In U.S. custody there is hot chow, medical care, mail, and pay-for-work details under the Geneva rules. It is not a life of ease, it is a life of fairness, and fairness is a shock after years of lies. Heino remembers the first time water flew over the fence in jerry cans and the ragged cheers that rose like a choir finding its note. He remembers a GI calling, "Hey, Krauts, want a ride?" and the strange taste of the words, "Yes, please, thank you." These are not grand speeches. They are tiny hinges that swing the heavy door of a man's belief. In Texas, order becomes visible in ordinary ways. A nurse checks a pulse and writes the number. A chaplain says a name slowly until the syllables are right. A clerk staples a photo to a card and files it so the world cannot forget that this individual exists. When hardliners sneer that kindness is weakness, moderates answer with sleep and steady meals. Some men gain weight. The land itself seems to fatten them with fresh bread and peaches from work details. They are stricter with their regulations than we are with ours. One POW writes home, both irritated and relieved. It is a backdoor compliment to a republic that believes rules protect the ruled and the ruler alike. The enemy's shock grows with every small fairness. A camp theatre opens, and a guard laughs at a joke before he catches himself, and then shrugs because laughter is not contraband. The word spreads through barracks and over oceans. If you must be captured, pray it is by Americans. That sentence breaks more resistance than a dozen leaflets. It is psychological warfare, powered by decency. The bridge forward is a simple, blinding question that shakes men awake at midnight. If they treat us this well when we have no leverage, What do they do for their own when the sky turns black and the convoys run all night? The answer comes on steel rails and concrete piers and billheads stamped with departure times. It sounds like a nation that knows the difference between power and cruelty and chooses power with conscience. A chaplain speaks German to a frightened girl at the gate, while a medic cleans a child's cut, and an MP logs a bracelet into an evidence bag. This is not theatre. It is habit. America wins because character is a procedure, not a press release. The United States fuses three things no other nation can hold together at this size: mass production, mass law, and mass decency. The factories stamp and rivet. The rule book sets the tempo. The small mercies never stop. You see it when a Liberty ship arrives and departs on one tide, when a trainload of blankets follows a trainload of shells, when camps in dozens of states run on the same posted schedule. You hear it when a guard, bored and alert at once, recites the 5 S's under his breath, because it's how he keeps the perimeter safe without turning cruel. You taste it in coffee served to a man who yesterday would not have been offered a cup of water. Dictatorships copy the loud parts of power. They paint steel and drill voices. They cannot copy the quiet work, the paperwork, the patience, the steady hand that says no to hatred at midnight when nobody is watching. We were safeguarded and sped to the rear. Heino writes, and the sentence reads, like a dispatch from a better future. In another war, a captured officer might vanish. Here he becomes an index card in a drawer that can be opened years later to prove a promise was kept. The enemy's shock is learning that this is not a show for the cameras. It is Tuesday. America can be rough, loud, imperfect, but when it decides how it will behave at its worst moments and then enforces that decision on itself, it becomes something tyrants cannot copy, predictable in the best way. A nation you can trust to mean what it says, a nation whose strength is not an outburst but a system. The bridge into the payoff is the ledger no one can argue with. Totals, timetables, throughput numbers that make even skeptics whistle low. We are about to turn the page and lay out the holy shit ledger, and the columns will tell a story that sounds made up until you realize it is only the truth. Written big, a staff officer totals the board and goes quiet. The chalk numbers look like a dare to the future. Roughly 297,000 aircraft produced, thousands upon thousands of tanks, guns, trucks, radios and engines. Liberty ships sliding down the ways by the thousands until the very word liberty sounds like a unit of tonnage. War production swelling toward 40% of national output at the peak, without collapsing the republic that paid for it. The United States becomes the factory of freedom and still finds the discipline to count every man it captures and feed him by the book. Inside the homeland, the POW count peaks at 425,871, 371,683 Germans, spread across 175 main camps and more than 500 branch sites, with work details logged and pay chits recorded. No chaos, no vanishing, just clipboards, trains and kitchens that smell like coffee at dawn. They knew our names, a prisoner says softly, and the sentence belongs right beside the aircraft total, because both reveal the same country. The ledger does not brag, it lists B 24 seconds and B 29 seconds, P 51, Ds, and C 47 seconds, M 4 Shermans by the trainload, rations by the million, and then a quieter column, letters delivered, medical visits recorded, photographs attached to index cards. This is how you measure a victory that is not only about firepower. The enemy's shock is felt in small scenes. A captain in a captured unit reading a posted schedule and realizing he is safer than he expected. A hardliner shoved to the margin by a system that punishes violence without hating the violent. A woman at the wire hearing her name pronounced correctly by a stranger in uniform. The totals are the music, the scenes are the notes. Together they make an anthem of competence. The bridge to the next chapter is personal and national at once. What happens when a man who saw all this decides that the country that captured him is the place where he wants his children to grow up? Years later, the former POW opens a notebook and titles a chapter, Back to Can-Do America. Heino is not an outlier. He is a path. He remembers the Tunisian truck where a GI yelled, "Hey, Krauts, want a ride?" and the Texas camp where a photo card proved he existed. And he decides the place that met him with rules and water is the place where a life can be built. He finds work. He finds neighbors. He learns that the polite habits of a POW camp, roll call, schedules, signatures, are the same habits that make a town safe, a school honest, a shop fair. The miracle is that the United States does not demand forgetting. It invites remembering under a roof that will not leak when the weather turns ugly. "Yes, please. Thank you," he said once as a prisoner. He says it again at a counter in a county office while registering a car. The same steadiness that moved trains and fed camps runs through small bureaucracies that keep strangers from becoming enemies again. The enemy's shock turns into a kind of admiration you can hear at kitchen tables. "They didn't just win," a former soldier tells his wife. "They knew what to do with winning." That line is the heart of the thing. America's decency was not the opposite of strength. It was strength's finest shape. The network that carried weapons carried trust too. And trust is the heavier cargo. A boy asks his father why they stayed, and the man answers in plain words, "Because the people who beat me by the rules are the people I can trust with my future." In that moment, the war ends a second time, and the second ending is the one that matters most. The bridge to the finale is right there in the old title written in pencil. Can do. The girl at the wire, the guard with the clipboard, the major with the map, the riveter with aluminum dust on her eyelashes, they all belong to that phrase. Now we pay it off with the full truth of the title line that started everything. The guard signs the form, the woman exhales, and no one disappears. That is the American miracle in 11 words. The convoy pulls out toward the larger processing site, and the posted schedule is the soft drumbeat that tells everyone what comes next. Count, check, inoculate, feed, bed down. It is simple. It is sacred. The question that has followed us through these pages answers itself in the dust behind the wheels. What proves American superiority beyond victory? A republic that defeats fascism, houses 425,871 enemy POWs under Geneva, produces roughly 297,000 aircraft, and builds a machine that can sprint and sustain without losing its conscience. A nation that turns enemies into neighbors because it knows that mercy, at scale, is a weapon tyrants cannot copy. We were safeguarded and sped to the rear, the diary says, and you can hear the echo in every train that arrived on time and every letter that found its way to a kitchen table in Bavaria. They knew our names, another man writes, and the sentence feels like a medal pinned on the country itself. The enemy's last shock is realizing that America did not just outfight them, it outvalued them. It made goodness efficient. It made decency routine. It turned the quiet things forms, rosters, mailbags, coffee, into the load-bearing beams of a global victory. The final image is the gate opening and the trucks shifting into gear while the chaplain reads one more name the right way. Steam rises from a kettle, a train whistle lifts and fades. The sky is the hard blue of a workday. Somewhere a factory bell rings the change of shift, and a tired woman in a bandana lifts her lunch pail with a smile. She helped build the plane that guarded the convoy that carried the prisoners, who asked the only question that matters when power and goodness meet. "Please let us stay," they said. And America, busy and kind, made room. The credits roll over clipboards and coffee cups, and the anthem is not shouted. It is posted on a bulletin board in neat block letters. "We will keep faith."